Welcome to Inside the Vault, Enterprise Bank's podcast series where we talk about items of interest to the small business community. Today, we're going to dig into the emergence of artificial intelligence, AI, and how it applies to businesses of all size, with a particular focus on our viewers and listeners that are small business owners or involved in small privately held companies. With me today are Dan Simkins and Doogie Levine of ATiiD, which is a business that is focused on local business here in the Pittsburgh area that is focused on helping businesses engage efficiently and effectively with AI. Dan, Doogie, welcome to Inside the Vault.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Doogie's a repeat guest.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Dan's new to us, but before we start talking about ATiiD and how small business owners can embrace this evolving AI landscape, get a little background from you guys. So, Dan, let's start with you. A little bit of your personal, professional background, and then we'll start talking about where ATiiD is focused.
Okay, so my background, oddly enough, starts in the arts. I have an arts background and went to school for design, but I graduated in the 90s, and that's when the internet was that new technology that was becoming more graphical. And to learn the internet, you had to learn HTML. And so I ended up going down the rabbit hole. Next thing I know, I wake up, I'm a full-blown .NET developer designing and building databases. And so working shoulder to shoulder with computer science majors. And I did that for about 7.5 years. But and then from there, I ended up in healthcare. I went to McKesson. I was in their implementations. I got promoted, led several teams at McKesson, and went through their Six Sigma Green Belt training program. And that was great. And then from there, I went to another healthcare company where I thought, oh, here's my dream job. I'm going to be an art director. So I was an art director. And we did a lot of things in marketing and e-learning. And so I had creative people. I had web developers. I had a videographer. We had a whole studio, podcast, the whole 9 yards. And then they got acquired by Premier Health, which is they do data analytics, and it's a great company out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so after that is where I broke out on my own. I ended up deciding, hey, let's take my try at business, and because that was the frontier I hadn't reached yet. So to start my own business, I started a marketing agency, and so that's the blend of the creative and the technical, which is why marketing was just a good fit. And and I got a business coach. So I have a business coach, and after about a year or two, he says, "Hey, I have a business idea for you." And this is after ChatGPT was released to the public.
Yeah, it was like ChatGPT 2 came out.
Yeah, and everyone's playing with it. And we would talk about it, and he says, "You should do AI consulting." And at first, I was very hesitant. I thought, "Nah, it's chaos. Why would I wade into that mess? I get it, but no one's figured it out yet." And he says, "No, businesses need someone like you to help make sense of that technology, and you seem to be good at that." And so I said, okay, here, we'll try it. So I said, I'll analyze 2 businesses as a case study because I don't know, what I have to offer or what needs to be done. But so after doing analyzing 2 businesses, the light bulbs went off, and I thought, okay, now I get, the challenge and the importance that businesses need to be, understand what this technology is going to offer and how to prepare and evolve into it.
Yeah, so kind of your second go-round with an emerging technology started with
the
proliferation of the internet and now the
Exactly.
proliferation of AI.
Correct.
So you mentioned a business coach, which is a good segue to Doogie.
That's right.
Who the bank has had a relationship with from a management consulting perspective. So Doogie, a little bit of your history.
Yeah, so I also have, I guess, a non-traditional background to getting to doing what I'm doing, right? My background's in youth work, mental health, behavioral health. I have a 12-year career of working with kids and developing that, and then I started my first business, which was a summer camp. So in 2019, I moved back to Pittsburgh, and I was looking for something to do, and a light bulb went off when I started meeting business owners who were struggling with how do I do the things that people are telling me to do? how do I implement a plan? How do I build a system? How do I help my team to actually achieve? So I started my first business in Pittsburgh called IAS, Business Coaching Consulting, to help people around operations, SOPs. And that's what's actually evolved into what we do with ATiiD, because to be successful in an AI future, you really have to have your operations dialed in. You have to understand your workflows and how you want people to actually do the job that you want them to do, not just from a functional standpoint, but from an emotional and behavioral standpoint, to get the most out of what AI is capable of doing. And that's going back to even old school taking data analytics, which is like the first touch point that most people have with AI, is, a Google Analytics account or seeing on their website the traffic, whatever it was. Like, you've been interacting with some form of AI for a fairly long time. But it's like being able to actually apply this and know how. That's where our superpower at ATiiD has become, to really help transition businesses.
Because this
to
is
look at
more
it
than
from
just
that.
technology. It's about process. It's about people.
Yeah, I mean, because without it, if you just try to implement AI without taking into account the human components of it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's like trying to, or it's going to be very painful. You won't see results. So I think that's like a huge thing about kind of how our backgrounds come together to really help and assist businesses in a space with this transition that other people just aren't able to help with.
Gotcha. So, how did you guys get together in forming and operating ATiiD?
So, we run in the same circles, and I knew Doogie, and just even talking to him, I was obviously became impressed with him early on. And he knew me in the marketing sphere, and I shared with him, hey, I'm doing these case studies, and I've decided this is a good direction to move into. And basically, Doogie says, hey, let's talk. And what's interesting from my background is, given that I have that creative and the technical, I also have a lot of that leadership and process improvement right through the Six Sigma. And I have an appreciation with the human behavior process aspect of it, which is a strength that Doogie really brings. And it just made just complete sense, because I knew technology is only half the story, and it's just our skill sets aligned. And I thought,
Yeah, so we locked ourselves, like, we literally met for a year before we decided to like launch. So this was like in what, 2023,
Yeah,
like
something
20
like that.
end of 2022, 2023. We locked ourselves in a room one day a week for like 2 or 3 hours just to
For about
say
2 months.
for months, to go and say, like, how is this really going to impact businesses? What are they going to need? And at the same time, Dan's starting to do these case studies to see where these businesses are starting to like look at this. And it was just, and I think that's when a lot of like light bulbs went off, because Dan's technical knowledge of like the foundation of AI, because the foundation of AI is in .NET development, it's in database development. Like, it's all comes down to data anyways.
Right.
It was like, oh, hold on, there's something special here that really can, make a positive impact.
So you kind of focused yourselves as people-focused AI consultants. Can
Correct.
you give me a little more insight on that approach?
Yeah, so we wanted to, we knew, just like every other technology that's come out, there's going to be plenty of people building widgets, right? Building something they think people want. And you see tons of those on the market. And then you also have people that are rushing to buy these things, from small business all the way up to large enterprise companies, throwing billions and trillions of dollars really at this thing without really analyzing their business and understanding where should this fit. And yeah, the biggest guys, they don't mind. They've got billions of dollars in R&D money to throw around. But small business, like, you don't have that same money to be throwing and making a mistake. A $2,000 investment in something might be a lot to a small business. A $10,000 investment's a huge thing. And, a $600,000 to build something custom, that's like an impossible thing. But to get certain results, that's the different levels we're talking about of what businesses need. So we were saying, like, okay, we need to look at your business use case, right? We have to look at your workflow, like how you actually want to run your business, before you go and just start wasting money and throwing it around hoping. This isn't, you have the opportunity to not have to throw darts at a wall.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, talking with business owners myself and what I do here for the bank, and I'm sure you guys, I kind of see it as kind of a continuum. On one end of the spectrum, there's certain people out there with the mindset that this is going to be the end all be all. This is the greatest thing to happen to data analytics and business efficiency and business growth. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where, oh my God, this is going to replace all my employees and all the people and human touch of businesses. So I think most people are somewhere in between. Where do you guys see it?
Well, I think a big part of our sort of mission is to address that question. Is AI going to replace our jobs? And just from my background or my experience, and I know Doogie's as well, is from leading teams, what you realize is the power of people. And what I see in this technology is that people are still going to be extremely crucial, right? So it's the idea of people are going to be your ultimate resource because AI alone isn't enough. And so what does that look like? And so I think a big motivation is to say, let's help businesses design the human role to account for this technology so that they're getting the greatest impact. And so people, that's the other thing. Jobs are obviously going to change and evolve, and there's going to be some pain involved, and it's going to be scary. That's just like all change. But, with the right analysis and approach, you can help people see the value of the shift. Because if you do that, they'll shift more naturally, organically. And I think ultimately AI is going to help people's work be more fulfilling, to be honest.
Yeah, one of the things that we've noticed in our early implementations are that people are getting to the harder parts of their job more, faster, more often.
Right.
So instead of having to spend hours doing research or hours writing documentation, which might feel good in the moment because you're checking a box kind of thing, but it's kind of wasteful and it's not where you get the win. Gotcha. Right? Like you don't get the win in the research. You don't get the win in the writing of the offer letter or the production of the report or the, maintenance log or whatever you're providing your client. Like you don't get the win from that. You get the win from the interaction with the client and the delivery of it. And we're seeing that, with AI, you're getting more time to do those and to do them more successfully, more, personally versus like transactionally. So I have a very positive outlook for AI. I think for the most part, it's not going to replace jobs. It's going to make up more abundance of jobs. However, there are probably some positions that will be eliminated, but there's going to be so many new things created.
Yeah, you guys call it the Bob problem, right?
Yeah, the Bob problem. Exactly. Well, that's a slight different problem. Is like every company has a Bob, the guy that just knows how to do all the things, right? And he's probably older, been there for a long time. He or she's been there for a long time. And that's AI gives you the opportunity to capture that person's knowledge for the first time, where it doesn't leave the door, right? Like so many people are like, oh, I need to hold on to these people because they're the only person that knows how to run my machine. When it breaks, they're the only one that knows how to fix it because we've jerry-rigged this thing a million times.
Yeah. And we look at our business owner demographic, not just business owners, but key employees. We have an aging business population here.
Yeah.
A lot of that intelligence, a lot of that knowledge.
Skill, knowledge, experience, that's
you
all
need a way to
capturable.
capture that.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing. I know Dan has a lot of this is what we consider the holy grail of what this version of AI is going to be able to do. So I'll let Dan talk more about the Bob problems and how businesses can think about it.
Well, I think what's interesting is that this technology, the power is now expanding beyond what we've traditionally thought of how data is stored. It's allowing you to store broader aspects of information because AI, machine learning, can understand it. And a lot of businesses aren't thinking that way. And this is completely new approach, but it's possible because it's just data. As long as you're storing data, you can do something with it. And so, but the key is what's good data versus bad data. And so that's why it's important to have an analysis done or to create a process by which you're capturing that data. And so the ideas of the Bob. See, I know there's a lot of fear around, well, I have my Bob and he's been here 25 years. He's not going to be here much longer. Well, the day Bob retires is the day that knowledge is gone, right? He walks out the door or if something happened, right, God forbid he gets hit by a bus. There's all that risk, right? So it's going to take time to fully capture Bob's experience. So what we're trying to encourage businesses now is you have to create those processes now to capture that. Because you also, not only do you want to capture Bob's experience, but you want Bob to validate it, right? Because we're training models. So if Bob can say, yes, the model's giving you the result I would give you, now you're confident that you've captured Bob. But the other thing, which is with that blog we just released, is the idea of apprenticeship, right? The idea that kids coming out of school don't have the knowledge that businesses need. And so the concept is basically in the future with AI, onboarding will be easier. Why? Because you're basically going to pair your new employee with an AI model. And the AI model will become their trainer. But once that human gets to the point of a Bob type knowledge, now the AI shifts from being their trainer to their assistant, right? And that's where work's going, and we can see it. And what we're saying to businesses is prepare, even if you can't fully implement it today or tomorrow, let's say, still lay the groundwork to capture Bob's knowledge today, because when you do have the resources or when the technology comes down in price enough where you can afford it, you want that data waiting for that moment so that you can basically resurrect Bob as a concept.
Yeah. So dealing with, small business, which is the focus of the bank, the other thing I hear from our clients is, I'm too small to worry about AI. This is just for big companies and big data.
Yep.
And I'm sure you guys, with case studies and your work, see that is not necessarily a limiting factor for use of AI, the size of the business. You talk a little bit about
Correct.
that?
Yeah, so big companies, of course, are going to be able to do bigger things with AI, but they're also doing it at higher cost, right? Like even just augmenting workflows right now, just tacking on AI into certain parts of it, a basic LLM like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Copilot into your workflow, either through human action, use this sequence and do it, or building agents or going full agentic tools. Those are all accessible to small business. What I just talked about varies from $50 a month to $1,000 total. That's an accessible thing, minus the build costs. Like,
Right.
The cost to do it, but the benefits to a small business, like a 10-person employee company, is like adding an 11th employee, for $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
All right, you know what I mean? Like, what's one more employee, the one you always wanted to add, worth to your company? So worth $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year for a $12,000 investment. That's what's accessible still to small business.
Yeah.
Like,
And AI aside, the other thing I hear from, small privately held companies, mom and pop shops, small employee count, is I can't really focus on strategy. I can't really focus on sales because I'm so mired in my day-to-day operations. And there's a real place for AI in, let's say, making the more mundane day-to-day operations of a business more efficient, right?
yeah, I mean, that's a problem that I deal with in my previous business quite a bit. I mean, first of all, it starts with their own belief system, right? Like, AI is not going to solve that problem if you don't actually want to solve that problem, right? A lot of business owners want to own the idea of being busy in their business, and they're like attached to it emotionally. I can't focus on strategy, right? It's an emotional feeling of like, oh, I have to be the guy doing it or whatever. And it's like, unless you're willing to move on from that and move to, okay, I want something more for my business than owning it as a job, which is totally fine to be like, I want to own it as a job. That's great. But if you want something more, that's when you'll really be able to do it, because that's when you actually start documenting your processes and you start actually saying, hold on, how can I make this faster, more efficient? And when you start asking yourself, how do I make this faster, more efficient, less time consuming on me? That's when you'll be like, oh, let me see what AI can do.
Yeah. So when we're talking about AI in the small or in the general business world. I mean, every business owner, every key employee, they're getting hit in all directions from the media, you know, talking about it as this kind of nebulous thing. What are the biggest mistakes you see business owners making in this still relatively early stage of
very
evolution, in terms of, you know, trying to adopt something without really thinking it through?
In terms of mistakes, you know, the number one is not actually understanding their business, right? It's hard to add in something brand new that isn't really understood, like as a market. Like we actually don't know how we're going to do AI at scale yet. Like as a country, we don't know how to do it. Like it will cost over $8 trillion a year to maintain the infrastructure for AI at scale. No one knows how to do this. So like the cost of how to operate it has to be dropped quite a bit for it to become realistic as this widely implemented thing. So the business use case is the number one mistake that, you know, I see with AI is what is my actual use cases for AI? How should I be using it versus what I'm hearing or seeing? So that's the number one thing that I would say. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, another might be that they're locking into a specific technology without looking at it holistically, right? So everyone's going to their preferred LLM, large language model, for those who don't know what that is, you know, like a ChatGPT, a Gemini. And they're really hyper-focused on that, where when you look at the process of the business that needs to be accomplished, right, by a system, AI might not be the answer. That's a big problem as well. People assume, well, AI can do this. Yeah, not as accurately as you think. And perhaps AI is not what you need to solve that. It's more of an automated system.
I was going to say the next mistake is thinking AI is the solution when you need either. I was actually just talking with someone yesterday, and I was like, actually, a virtual assistant would do that a heck of a lot better than trying to force AI. Hiring a VA would solve that problem, which is a human being that works remote for your company, would have solved that problem 10 times more effectively than AI would right now from a cost basis. Like, and that's something that I see all the time is like, well, when we do this analysis work for companies to be like, actually, you know what? Your problem can be solved more cost effectively doing it this way than trying to fit AI. However, when it gets to this point or the cost to do it with AI comes down to this point, switch to AI. You know?
Gotcha.
But that's another, I would say that's probably the third biggest mistake
Yeah.
is forcing it into places where,
It doesn't apply.
or it's just not the right option right now. Yeah.
And one other point is that I feel that it's not, or I think it's not orchestrated well. Meaning, okay, they have X number of employees, and every employee is using AI to do their role, but are they creating consistent results across, right? So that's part of it. I think, and also the idea of orchestrating.
Like getting into governance.
Well, even the governance, but even as, okay, if you look at someone's role and they have now gained efficiency with AI, are they taking longer lunch breaks? Are they leaving home early? Or have they gained hours that the company could benefit from and the company's missing out? Yeah. I mean, because that's really a big part of our analysis is to say, and that's why when we look at the next iteration of what the job is when we go into a business and say, well, here, you can automate all these things with AI or machine learning. You know, and they're hearing it in the bigger companies, they're just laying off people. And what we're saying is, hey, before you go and lay people off, people who've been in your industry, who know your business, who know your customer, don't let them just walk out the door. Yeah. So that's another thing. I think people aren't capturing those extra hours that their employees have gained by using LLMs to do things that are of higher value to the business.
Yeah. So interested in you guys' take on kind of open AI versus closed AI. And what I'm getting at is one of the things that scares me in my world, we do a lot of startup businesses. And I can, not that I'm a genius, but been doing this a long time, I can tell an AI generated business plan. And it's a little scary because, you know, part of getting into a business in a startup scenario is doing your own research and really understanding your market and, you know, just plugging in what you want to do into an open AI model. How good is the intelligence that you're getting, and is that really an appropriate way to basically vet your risks, which can be significant in a business ownership scenario?
Well, here, that goes back to what I was saying, the importance of the human aspect of the business, right? Because what AI is good at is ideation, right? It'll create all these plans and ideas. And ideas are a dime a dozen. The hard part is executing on an idea, right? Everyone can come up with a business idea, but it's the person who executes and accomplishes it and makes it profitable. Those are the ones that are worth their salt. So what you're seeing is you're seeing just blanket ideation, but it's going to take the human to capture it and make it happen.
And actually, like, it's actually on the flip side. I would say it's on the bank would have to change its processes of how it's actually evaluating it. Like, whereas traditionally you would take, I would assume you would take the business plan, you would review it and be like, oh, this is good, let's move on to the next step. You actually probably need to put in more questioning of the items in this. Like, okay, great, I saw in this that your ideal ICP is X. How did you verify that? What methodology did you use to verify this? Or is it just the assumption you're making?
Yeah.
Right? Like, by adding in more questioning, first of all, you're going to get a higher quality investment from the bank standpoint, because they're either going to know the answer, they're not going to know the answer, and they're going to have to go get it. And that's not something that AI is going to be able to do, because they can go back and say, how did you verify? And the AI is going to be like, well, I guessed. I mean, that's most likely what it will say. And then they're going to have to actually do some sort of verification exercise, which is going to be like, well, how can I verify this? They might ask the AI that, and the AI is going to be like, well, here's a few ideas. Go survey this type of client or schedule meet, and you're ultimately going to get a better startup company than even the previous way.
Gotcha.
Even though they're auto-generating the minutia and the formatting,
But can you guys talk a little bit about that concept of, open AI versus closed AI? Well, a lot of what we were talking about from an efficiency perspective is capturing internal company data for training purposes for growth versus the public domain and the quality of
so you're talking more about protecting your data versus like using an open source model like an LLM, right? So yeah, we can speak to that. Dan, you want to?
Yeah, so a couple things is one crucial thing for small businesses that they have to understand is that they are at the mercy of someone creating a tool for them to use, right? So for instance, these larger companies are building them in-house, right? But the good news is, like any other technology, it's becoming cheaper. And right now, like say, for instance, Microsoft's creating easier environments to isolate your data, to create, attach LLMs to them. And that's not...
Google's doing the same thing.
Yeah, so it's not that unaffordable. So it's there, for the people. But also what the small businesses have to understand is that their tools that they're using are getting smarter. And that's another aspect of advice for small businesses is, rather than focus on AI broadly of all the confusion of what's out there, try to focus on the tools you're using and make sure you're keeping up with how they're advancing. And sometimes maybe a competing version of their CRM or ERP or some tool they're using is implement an AI that would help them. Maybe they shift or whatever. So that's just that's just things they'll have to navigate going forward. Is the idea of how to, reading through their privacy policies to make sure their data is protected and how it's protected.
And from a functional standpoint, we talk about like governance, the rules that a company makes for what is and is not being put into different types of sources. So that could be even like, okay, we do allow AI to be used for planning, ideation, this XW, but we don't allow it for this, and that's fine, right? Because that will still protect. I just couldn't imagine that companies are actually putting in too much actual sensitive data, right? Like, because all the stuff you might want to do in your workflow, you can either just not put that information in from the beginning and say, leave it blank, I'll fill it in, right? It's not a necessary thing. Or it's probably not even that, it's probably a public domain piece of information anyways.
Right.
Like,
Gotcha.
I couldn't imagine that there's that much secret data work that most small businesses are actually doing at this point.
Gotcha. So, process. How does a small business eat this elephant? What are, at a very high level, what are the best steps in the process to start with?
So I like to tell people, I'm like, so when I talk to people about AI, I'm like, have you dabbled yet? So there's like, I put my toe in the water, is I use ChatGPT to help me write an email. Right? That's like step one for most people right now, is that's their story. Then I go, have you dabbled? Which is, have you started asking this LLM, if it's ChatGPT or any of the other ones, how you can help my business? Have you asked it that question versus just feeding it for a result? When you start asking that question, that's when you're starting to figure out how AI actually works and how it can help you. So those are the first two steps: is toe in the water, just start using it. 2, start asking it questions about you. So you have to give it some information about you. This is who we are. This is how we work. Blah, 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 blah. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. And then ask it, how can it help you? And then start trying it. Once you do that, then you're ready to start engaging and talking about, okay, I need to talk to people about how to make AI really work for my business. But after those 2 stages, that's when you're really ready to start diving in.
Yeah. And from a fear factor perspective, another thing I think business owners, you guys speak to this from your experience, your competitors are doing this. Or maybe not.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be catching up, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, I mean, timing wise, what scale of business, what stage of business makes the most sense to really start looking at these tools and these resources?
I would say as soon as possible. The one term I like to use is, I tell people, AI is not going to be a light switch that you can just flick on and it's going to work. There's going to be, to really leverage it most fully in your business, you have to make sure that your data is properly stored. Sometimes that could be
And by data, we really are talking about information you use to make decisions.
Correct. But there's also the idea, as we touched upon earlier, is because of the AI's advancement, are there other data points that you've never thought to capture just because you've been in that traditional mindset of, okay, here, client name, address, phone number, contact, what they ordered, whatever. There's all kinds of data outside of that you can actually start capturing. And so it's really about just, analyzing your business and preparing it now. So when I tell people is, if your competitor is fully leveraging AI to where it's now has given them a capacity beyond you, again, you're not going to be able to just flick on a light switch. You're now probably 6 months to a year behind. So that's why we're telling businesses, start now. And that's kind of what the service we do is say, look, we're going to analyze your business and we're going to determine where it makes sense to implement now. But we also give them, as part of the roadmap, here's an ultimate vision for where you can be with AI. So we're not telling them, oh, you have to get there today, but that needs to be your new bullseye as far as, on the horizon line. And start implementing this technology and improving your processes and your data gradually so that you're moving in the right direction, so that once that technology fully becomes available and effective at achieving that, you'll be there already, and you'll just have to, then it'll become a light switch.
Gotcha. Well, great segue. So, how do business owners of all sizes, how do they engage with ATiiD? What resources?
So the best ways to engage with us are, 1, connect with us on LinkedIn. So, we have our ATiiD page, we have our personal pages. We put out tons of content that can help businesses just around AI, how to think about it, how to strategize around it. So that's a great way to just collect information. To contact us, I would say, fill out our thing on our website. Come to our website, fill out a contact form. We'll connect with you. You can also email us. I'm Doogie at ATiiD, DOGIE at ATiiD.com. Super easy. The other thing I want to put out there for everybody is we run a community for the Pittsburgh Tech Council called Steel City AI Innovators. We have a monthly meetup every second Wednesday of the month. And this is a great place for, if you are a complete novice in AI, to I'm an expert in AI, to come meet. We do live workshops there on AI tools. We do theoretical discussions. We have speakers. And I really encourage people that are like, oh, I'm nervous, I'm scared, or I'm avid, or like I am an evangelist. This is the place to be, because the reason we started this group was we wanted to bridge the gap between the these people who are building these high-tech tools and the implementations at the high level to the people that want to use it every day. Because so much technology is developed in these silos of what people think, and then it's forced on them. This doesn't have to be that way. Come to the room, be a part of the discussion, and shape what the future of AI is going to be.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, your initial engagement with a potential business client is kind of an assessment of where they're at.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, just one conversation with us will give you a good idea of what your potential is. And then from there, if they want to engage with us to do a roadmap, in that first conversation, we determine, okay, where's a good place to start and focus this analysis? And then if they want to engage with us, we'll do a roadmap analysis on that given process. And in our roadmap, we're giving them a layout of what their tech is today, what it will look like in the AI implementation. But we also include the human behavioral. Here's what your people or you are doing as a process, and here's what they should be doing once the AI is implemented. So that's all part of the roadmap.
As I always do in concluding our podcast episodes, nuggets of advice for entrepreneurs, small business owners in this realm. Parting words.
Well, I would say you have to start the analysis now on your business because, like I said, it's going to take some preparation, and it's going to be, there's a lot of complete dynamic shifts in how businesses are going to be run, how they work and function, and again, what data they capture and what data they leverage. And the earlier you get into the idea of capturing that, what would be a good approach to an AI world, the better.
Yeah, I would say organize your business, right? Like, if you don't have documented process right now, documented workflows, just start there. Like, you can start with first of all, AI can help you with that. Be like, hey, I need to document my workflows. I'm a landscaper.
Yeah.
Okay, help me do this. Let's start with a list of all the things. Start there, because that's going to tell you what information is important to capture, which is the next thing I would say is like organize your data. Once you understand your workflows, now you understand what information is important. Once you do that, now you're starting to get ready for an AI future.
So again, for our viewers and listeners, emerging technology, still in the early stages, but we have some local resources here that can help even the smallest of businesses kind of embrace this change in the business landscape and this new technology. Dan, Doogie, thanks for the info. For those of you that have any questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at insidethevault@enterprisebankpgh.com. You can check us out in audio format on all the major podcast platforms and in video format on YouTube. Once again, guys, thanks for the info. And for our viewers and listeners, thanks for tuning in.